right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Susan Henry. I'm a VP of Programming and Production at TV1, and I was also the executive producer in charge for this project that you're here to talk about today, A Mother's Intuition. We're very excited to bring this to you. It's going to air July 23rd, 9 Eastern, 8 Central. And for today, we're getting together with our live series leading up to the premiere with our amazing panelists. I want to thank you guys so much for being here today. We have Darlene McCoy. She's an award-winning inspirational and gospel singer, songwriter, radio personality, actress, author, songwriter, mentor, entrepreneur, comedian, speaker, and of course, host for this very special live series, A Mother's Intuition. We have Cass Seegers, a prolific and talented writer of countless screenplays, books, and stage plays. She's an incredible, talented producer and director, and she's also the director of A Mother's Intuition. And finally, Dr. Lori Johnson. She's a board-certified OBGYN with over 20 years of active clinical experience, but she's also an entrepreneur, an educator, a speaker, and an author who pursues medical mission trips abroad and in the Atlanta area ministries focused on women's health education. An incredible group of women. Thank you all so much for being here today. Our movie, A Mother's Intuition, is a crime thriller that stars Denise Boutet as a young mom who's gone through an incredible experience and finds out she's pregnant. And that is actually the beginning of her journey. And believe you me, when I tell you, you're going to enjoy this movie because her character, Tony, is really fighting for her life, her sanity, and her baby. I don't want to give too much away, but we do highlight Black mothers and their babies. And this really gives us a great opportunity to talk about some of the very dire issues in the medical community and maternal care, specifically for women of color, especially Black mothers. And that's something that is a theme throughout this film. Before we begin, I just want to share a couple statistics with you guys. According to the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention, Black women have the highest maternal mortality rate in the United States. It's basically 3 times the rate of their white counterparts, which is a shocking number. AP News recently published an article that researched and documented the social economic factors, racism, and chronic stress that contributes to poor maternal health for not only the mothers, but the infant outcomes and a higher rate of depression and preterm birth amongst African-American women and higher rates of mortality for Black infants as well. So these are some serious issues, but we gathered them all together into this film to use it really as a jumping off point to spark this conversation.
Right.
So I want to hand it over to Darlene so that we can start this incredible conversation.
Yes, and first of all, ladies, thank you all so much for doing this particular movie and doing this special. This is very important for us to have this conversation because, perhaps many of our African American mothers have normalized these economic factors, the racism and chronic stress as just this is just how it is with us. This is who we are, and this is just what we have to deal with. So I really appreciate, the highlight of the issues that we face. And but Susan, I want to go ahead and start things with you. So when did you realize that this movie was more than just a good script and that there was like an important social justice message within this movie?
Absolutely. It's interesting. We received this script right smack dead in the middle of the pandemic. And as you guys know, there was a lot of conversation at the time that rose to a national level on healthcare discrepancies, particularly in the African-American communities. Now, a lot of that conversation obviously was about COVID. However, it did open up the door for, taking a really good look at what was going on in our communities.
Mhm.
And maternal mortality, which is really Black women during pregnancy, during delivery, all the way up to post pregnancy, were having very big concerns about their care, their health care.
Mhm.
They were starting to speak out. It was an alarming, actually, number of people who were saying this is not an issue currently. It's been an ongoing issue, but we need
Mhm.
to start talking about it because people are dying just to give birth.
Mhm.
Their babies are dying as well. Um,
Mhm.
and we saw it also in the celebrity arena. You saw Serena Williams shared her personal story. You
Right.
also have people like Judge Hatchett's son, I'm
Mhm.
sorry, who lost his wife giving birth to their second child. So it
Mhm.
was happening across the board, and those were themes that were central in this script. And I
Mhm.
knew right away, as soon as we read the script, we said, this is something that we have to do because TV1, we want to educate, we want to entertain, we want to uplift, and we
Mhm.
want to spark conversations that are going to
Mhm.
change the things that are happening in our communities that
Mhm.
really are not good for people of color, our
Mhm.
families, our mental health, and our physical
Mhm.
well-being.
Mhm. Dr. Lori Johnson, you, of course, being in your field as an OBGYN for so many years, I know that you know firsthand, outside of just the script and this movie, what the statistics look like in the African American community. Can you speak to, the importance to understand that this possibly is, well, definitely is a social justice message?
Most definitely. I mean, there's a plethora of things that go into why we are where we are, but the fact is that we're here. And
Mhm.
so we have to understand what it is that we need as a community, how to advocate for ourselves, and
Mhm.
what those are, how we can get safe pregnancies. I mean,
Mhm.
it can be accomplished and should
Mhm.
always be, but we have got to take a really good look at the system and systems that are in place,
Mhm.
and change even our perspectives as Black women entering the medical field, entering the medical space,
Mhm.
knowing what we need to know and asking the right questions, and feeling empowered
Mhm.
to do so, because it is a social justice issue and we should not be dying like we are.
Mhm. Do you feel like, and Cass, I'm gonna come to you on this because sometimes Black women are afraid to speak up. They don't know what questions to ask, when they're in the doctor's room, and they just kind of listen to what's being said, but then if they start to ask questions, so I don't know why it is. It seems like black women are always looked upon as combative, and oh, she don't want to listen, and
Right.
whatnot. So, Cass, when we as of African American women speak up for ourselves, we're considered either aggressive or crazy. So how did you balance that when you were directing, of course, this story, and of course, in your normal life?
Well, I will definitely start with this story.
Yes.
With this story, when I first read the script, the one thing I loved so
Mhm.
many things about it, but the one thing that I really loved about it is how the writer implemented therapy. She
Mm.
implemented, okay, she's the character Tony has already recognizing there are some things that she needs to work on as a person. So we already start
Mhm.
off as this person that we are establishing her as someone who is balanced and is wanting the best for herself. So
Mhm.
that made it a little bit easier. But I think for me, with working with Denise and talking to her through the character, because the very first thing Denise said to me is, I don't want to come across crazy. Like we had that
Mm.
conversation. She's like,
Wow.
I don't want to play the victim. I don't want to come across crazy. So we talked about what moments in the story would make her seem crazy. And I
Mm.
think grounding it in reality, so many times we see Black women portrayed on TV as we go from 0 to 100. It's
Mhm.
like somebody steps on my toe and now it's like, you know what I
Right.
mean? We're the big
Right.
voice in the room. And that's because a lot of times we aren't controlling our own narrative, not in reality,
Mm.
not in
Mhm.
scripted, not in a lot of ways. And I think making this character, giving her steps, she went from shock, she
Mm.
went from grief, then
Mm.
sorrow, then
Mm.
frustration, then anger. It's like
Mm.
making it realistic. We don't, when things happen to us, most times we don't go off.
Right.
Even normally our nature.
Right.
So we don't do that, even though sometimes we are seen to do that. So that was one way I did. And that's the way Denise and I, we worked together to find those beats that made her journey realistic. And I think something that a lot of people will resonate with when they watch this, because it could have been a completely different movie. When something happened to her, she could have been completely off, and it would have just, escalated from there. And it wouldn't have seemed as realistic. And I don't think people would get the message we want them to get out of it.
And then the reality,
same in real life.
Exactly. Yeah. And speaking of real life, it seems that, when an African-American woman is going, to the doctor and she gets some news that's, is some bad news or whatever, is something else that she's got to deal with. It's like, this is the straw that's breaking the camel's back. And what we don't understand are all the underlying issues that this Black woman is dealing with as it relates to, not just her health, but then, she may be dealing with some relationship issues. She may be dealing with some issues with her career, with her job. Someone's out to get her. That type thing. You just never know. So, Dr. Lori, I want you to speak to this. I know we were talking, Susan, you spoke about the script coming during the pandemic. Okay. There's a lot of mistrust in our community. And I know, Dr. Lori, you being, an OBGYN, how has that, how can our community find ways to trust, our doctors a lot more in our community, and how can we empower ourselves, in the doctor's office, so that, perhaps we'll know what to ask and what to receive and not to receive. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's just we can, come across, if we don't know, or if we do know our biology, sometimes we'll look at a doctor and say, you don't know me like I know me. You know what I mean?
Right.
But what would you say to that? What should we be looking out for with expectant mothers?
I think one of the key things in the doctor-patient relationship, particularly in OB, is, like you said, it has to be trust. You have got to trust that I am going to do the right thing for you and your baby. You've got to. So that takes some time to build. I think sometimes as Black women, we're so intimidated by the system that we don't want to ask questions or push too much. But you've got to find a doctor that you trust, like you trust your hairdresser. You have to find a doctor that you feel comfortable with, that you may have to travel a little bit further. You may have to pay a little bit more money. You may have to wait to see that person, but you have to have a level of comfort and trust. And if you don't feel it, you can change. You can go somewhere else. If you go there and you get in like these cold, prickly vibes from your doctor, and you don't feel like they listen to you, or, we're in an age where there's, groups of 10 OBGYNs in one group. So you might see one of 10 different people when you're going for your visit. I'm still an old dinosaur. I'm a solo practitioner, but so I know everybody in my office pretty well. But if you're like one of 10, you don't know who you're going to see. You don't take that step and say, maybe I should go somewhere else. Maybe I should find a smaller group where I feel more at home. And that is truly the first key, because you don't want to start trusting me when we're in the delivery room and we're about to decide we need to do a C-section. That's not the time you want to start trusting me. You want to know that if I say, hey, we need to do this, that I am telling you the right thing to do. And so that's kind of where it starts. And that's what we can do. If you don't feel comfortable, if you don't feel good, go somewhere else.
Yeah, like they do churches. You don't want to go. I don't like this pastor. I'm going to another church. But Cass, what do you say to this?
I mean, I say we can research too. Dr. Lori, like, you can do your research on your doctor. I think, again, it's like we have the not trusting, but then we also don't listen to our gut. And then sometimes we don't do the research. So it's kind of a combination of all those things. And I think it's just been passed down from
Yeah.
our parents and our grandparents. It's like, that's your doctor. That's who your doctor is. Just stick with your doctor.
Mhm.
The doctor knows. But now,
Mhm.
you know, our grandparents didn't have this bevy of information at their fingertips. So
Mhm.
I think we also have to empower ourselves with what
Mhm.
knowledge we have, whether
Yeah.
it be a group, a reference, you know, information on that doctor.
Mhm.
We
Mhm.
have to do the research ourselves, along with, then once you find a partner that you love, and I call them a partner because they are. I've been with my OBGYN,
Mhm.
but you know, my children are 18 and 13. So I've been with my same one. And when you find that partner, you have to talk to them about things. Like, there can be no shame
Right.
in
Correct.
what's going on with your body. And I
Exactly.
think there's a little bit of that too, sometimes when it comes to our health.
Exactly. Susan, what do you say to this?
I agree with you, ladies. I mean, I think you have to participate in your care.
Mhm.
And for me, that means I'm going to interview my doctors. I'm going
Mhm.
to do the research that Cass just talked about.
Mhm.
If something does not feel right, and we've all been in that situation in a
Right.
doctor's office, I'm sure,
Right.
then you can't be afraid to make a different choice. I think a
Mhm.
lot of times we look at that label of the moniker Dr. So and so,
Mhm.
no disrespect to any doctors, but that
Mhm.
doesn't mean it's the be all end all, right?
That's right.
If
That's right.
you have a bad experience with the doctor, you feel like you're not being seen, you're not
Mhm.
being heard, that's
Mhm.
the time when you have to say, okay,
Mhm.
enough. I need to find
Mhm.
somebody else who's going to care about me and my health and the health
Mhm.
of my children in this case. To the nth degree, because it is a life and death situation. It absolutely is.
It
We have a
absolutely,
character that
absolutely.
says that in the movie too, Susan. Braylee's character. She
Yeah,
says that. She's like, "Girl, that's not your husband. Like,
right.
you don't have to get a divorce. You can just go to another doctor if you don't feel
Right.
safe."
Yes,
If you
Um,
don't
That's
you have
exactly
some
right.
feel it,
friends that,
that's
Mhm.
right.
that aren't afraid to say that.
Yeah.
That's true.
And I don't know about you all. I have one daughter, and she's 30, she'll be 33. And one of the things that I would say is very, very important for us as mothers, as Black mothers, is to teach our daughters etiquette when it comes to this, doctor etiquette, how to choose the right doctor, how, what does it mean? Because I don't, listen, these millennials, they don't trust nobody worse than us. I'm telling you, I always have to talk her off a ledge. I'm just like, hey, it's not that serious. You gotta, we've got to be a lot more involved in the lives of our younger people especially our younger daughters, just to let them know, because there are some young ladies that won't even go to the doctor until
Yeah.
they're sick,
Right.
you know, and I'm sure you see that a lot of times, Dr. Lori, right?
Yeah, funny you should say that. One of my good friends, her daughter is pregnant, and she called me. She says, "Well, she's pregnant, but she hasn't gone to the OB." And I'm like, "What? She hasn't gone to the OB?" And I'm like, I said, "If you don't get her to the OB, I will drive there and take her myself." And that's because, I get it. She's concerned and she's fearful, but the opposite is not the answer either. Just to not go at all, because then you're putting yourself at even more risk. And
Mhm,
there are lots of things that can happen in the course of a pregnancy that
mhm.
you don't necessarily feel bad until it's bad, and then you're like,
Right,
oh, it's an emergency, and
right,
it's tragic sometimes.
right.
So you have to again establish that rapport. Like, I'm on
Mhm.
Instagram, my patients DM me all the time. So
Wow.
you have to find that space where you feel good with that person, and
Mhm,
like,
mhm,
research, Google, they write reviews, all type of stuff
mhm,
nowadays. They're on
mhm.
TikTok, they're everywhere, so you can find someone that fits with your personality and what it
Yeah.
is that you're looking to do.
Yes, that's it. And you know what? I First of all, this is a fantastic conversation. I want to, kind of extend, just a little bit of information with some things that we can all do as Black mothers to help our younger mothers, and then, even speak to our girlfriends, our friends, our cousins, you know and help them to birth healthy babies. First, you want to ask your doctor about what signs to look for with high blood pressure and heart issues and expectant mothers. One of the biggest things that we don't do when in our community as much as we should is talk about genetics, talk about
Mhm.
medical your genetic history with your aunts and your grandmother on the paternal side, the maternal side. I think we really need to understand that and have these conversations. We talk about everything else but health, huh? um,
Mhm.
but it's important for us also to research. Too often we have to be our own advocates when it comes to our health. One of the things that and I have to say my daughter got me into this, but she was just like, Mom, what's your blood type? You need to know that. Mom, what, you need to see what you're allergic to. Why don't you make sure that you know what you're allergic to. But I believe that understanding your own biology would be something that you need to discuss with your doctor. you know and I'm sure you could Dr. Lori, I'm sure you see that if someone, well, let me just ask you this. Let me just ask you this.
Okay.
When you have a patient, not a know-it-all patient, but a patient that can give you more information than you're asking in the first place, is that helpful to you when it comes to determining what's going on?
It's incredibly helpful.
Yeah.
Even knowing the names of your medications, if you're on medicine, not it's a little pink pill or it's a little white pill or it's
Right.
the yellow one. I'm like, okay, I don't know what the yellow one is. What's it for? I was like, what is
Right.
this? So knowing, having a history, and if you have any medical issues, the best time to get a healthy pregnancy is before you get pregnant. So
Hmm.
anyone that is actually planning a pregnancy should
Hmm.
go in for a pre-planning or prenatal visit before they're pregnant to kind of see, do you have slightly high blood pressure? Is your sugar a little bit out of control? What can we do to maximize? Are you a little overweight? Can we lose 20 pounds before we get
Hmm.
pregnant? And then that way we have less of a risk going into it. So before you're pregnant is the best time to maximize your health. But again, every first visit I say, what's your family history? What's your blood type? Is there any sickle cell in your bloodline? Is there a bleeding
Mm.
disorder? Is there any kind of, a thyroid disease or,
Mm.
anything like that that I'm going to need to know to maximize getting your healthy pregnancy to the end.
Wow. Wow. Cass, you want to speak to that or?
No, I just completely agree. I have
Yeah.
thyroid disease, and I did not find out until I had it and I was sick. And then I had to
Yeah.
go back and find out when they said it was
Mm.
genetic. So
Yeah.
but I didn't know. So I completely, completely, completely agree. And I just want to add that. And this just really is a shout out to TV1. We tell a lot of stories. We get a
Hmm.
lot of Black stories. And so I was just
Hmm.
very honored to be able to tell an important story. Because
Yes.
Yeah.
storyteller, we love fun stories. We love to make people laugh. But I
Right.
think when we get to tell an exciting story, it's a thriller, but it's also an important story. That's
Hmm.
just like double the joy. So
Yeah.
I just want to shout out to Susan Henry and the TV1 team because
Yes.
they seem to always, you guys land it. You guys,
Yeah.
you have a lot of entertaining things, but you really land the important stories too. So
That's right. A mother's intuition. And family, make sure that you are watching on July 23rd, 9 Eastern, 8 Central. And let's talk a little bit about hospitals and incidents at hospitals. We've got to start reporting incidents to hospitals and share these stories in social media and with each other, because there's a big need for accountability. you know
Mhm.
we have to have some accountability, and sometimes we'll freeze up, and we'll see some things and it's just like, I'm not going to say something. You'll to call your cousin, but your cousin ain't going to say nothing.
Right.
We need to talk with the people that matter, to talk with the people that can stand with you and speak to those issues. But more than anything, we've got to be there for one another, I would say. And for our expectant moms, because I remember when I got pregnant with my first child, I was 18 years old. I knew absolutely nothing. Okay. But we have younger mothers, we have mothers that are older, that are we just want to make sure that we are, in support of their health and in their life. Maybe we should pay attention a little bit more. ask a little bit more, questions about their health journeys and whatnot. So, I don't want to close it without just, I want to go to each one of you, Susan, starting with you, overall in your, um, just in your reality in your life. What do you feel like is the most important message that mothers need to get from a mother's intuition?
Absolutely. And I think it's definitely right there in the title. You have to listen to your gut. You have to be able to look at the situation you're in and decide if this is going to be good for you or bad for you. And if it's anywhere on the other side of that line, then ask for help.
Yeah.
Find somebody else, find an alternative, talk
Hmm.
to your friends and your family members, people you trust, get
Hmm.
references, do your
Hmm.
homework, and don't forget to speak up. If you
Right.
in 80% of the cases where mothers have died in maternal mortality health, 4 out of 5 times it was preventable, which
Oh,
says to
wow.
me, combined with it's 3 times higher for Black women than white women, that says to me that it's totally preventable. So
Mm,
accountability is a big part of that, and we have to call out folks when they're not doing the right thing or they're
mhm,
not listening.
mm,
You have pain, report that and keep reporting it
mm,
until somebody listens. That's just
mhm,
an example, but I think that that's the biggest thing. Listen to your gut and be a participant in your own healthcare.
mhm. Cass, I'm gonna go to you first because when I get to Dr. Lori, I got a feeling she's gonna shut this down.
Yeah,
But
well, I mean, Susan just pretty much said it all. Have a
yeah,
voice. Know that your
yeah.
voice is very, very important, and no one knows
Mhm,
your body like you. No one
mhm,
can speak and advocate for you.
mhm.
And just knowing that if you got to sit in the car and just talk yourself up when you're
Yes.
in there, um, yeah, you can see my tactics, right?
It works. It
Yeah,
works.
so you definitely have to speak up. That would be my first thing.
Right. Dr. Lori, what do you say?
All the above, and find a doctor that you trust.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to call. Don't be afraid to show up to the hospital. If they send you home, you can show back up again. It's okay.
Yeah.
If you want to get in the car and go, if you feel something's wrong, by all means do it, because there will be that one time that something might be wrong and we can fix it. And we don't want you to die. On behalf of the medical
Absolutely.
community, we
You're
don't
right.
want you to die.
Right.
We want you to have healthy babies. And so it
Yeah.
breaks my heart that we're in the state that we're in. But some of us are out here trying to do the right thing. So
Yeah.
call, show up, find
Yeah.
somebody you trust until you
Mhm.
get what you want.
That's
And
right.
find a doctor that looks like you. If you've had bad experiences,
That's right.
find a doctor that looks like you that you
Mhm.
can walk in, because there's certain things culturally that an African American doctor might understand more coming
Yeah.
from a Black woman than a
That's
white
right.
doctor would. And
That's
that's
right.
not to say that white doctor isn't a good doctor, but there's certain the nuances, right, that
Right.
we can
Mhm.
have
Right.
a conversation with that doctor
That's right.
and be very open and honest about what is happening with your
Yeah.
body, with your health. And it can make all the difference. So if you're
Mhm.
not comfortable out in that space, and then we talked about that trust factor, then find
Mhm.
a doctor that looks like you.
That's it. I am so excited about this show, this television premiere on TV One. Sunday, July 23rd from 9 Eastern, 8 Central. It's A Mother's Intuition. And ladies, just before we go, I want to give a few statistics on the state of current health care for Black mothers and babies. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, Black women have the highest maternal mortality rate in the United States, almost 3 times the rate of white women. And according to the Journal of the National Academy of Sciences, Black newborns are more than twice as likely to die in their first year as white newborns. And a lot of what we've discussed today is the culprit. We've got to talk. We've got to show our young women and ask more questions. But here are some other reasons: social and economic factors, racism, and chronic stress contribute to poor maternal and infant health outcomes. Now, I do want to just go into this. I know she didn't ask me to do this, but racism. A lot of people have no idea, how to respond to racism, in the doctor's room, you know especially when you're going to get care and you're going to receive care and you're supposed to trust your doctor. A lot of our women don't even know when they are being mistreated, you know Dr. Lori, can you speak to that? How would someone know that?
It's gonna look like you you can only do this. When you come in with X problem or Y problem, and the doctor gives you a single option as if there is
Mm,
nothing else. Now, outside of something like cancer, you usually have other options.
yeah.
If the doctor is unwilling to discuss options with you,
Mm,
it may be racist. If
wow.
he says something like, "Well, you don't need X," don't tell me what my body needs. You don't need
Wow.
my uterus. I need it. I want it.
Right.
That can be racism.
Mm,
And then there are times where, and I hate that I can say I've seen this, where a black patient will be given this option. Well, we're going to just deliver her early because this. Well, why don't we
mm,
try this other approach first?
mm.
Why don't we try to do this? Why don't we try to do that? So, yeah, it's real, but classically it's going to be that very paternalistic, that very, this is what I'm saying you do. And then
Yeah.
often if you challenge that individual, they're going to be angry or have some aggression, or come
Hmm.
back at you with a lot of different attitudes. So that is what racism look like, and that's when you should
Hmm.
definitely go somewhere else.
And here again, another reason you got to trust your intuition. Got to
Mhm.
do that. The CDC also found that more than 80%, or roughly 4 in 5 maternal deaths, were due to preventable causes. Research discovered Black women made up a disproportionate 1/3 and were more likely to die of cardiac or coronary problems.
Mhm.
Another reason, for the statistics that I read earlier is, the top causes of maternal death in the United States, including hemorrhage, infection, high blood pressure disorders during pregnancy, like preeclampsia and eclampsia, and cardiovascular conditions. Formerly Olympian Tori Bowie, who
Oh,
was pregnant, recently found dead due to complications, including eclampsia. Can you explain what eclampsia is? I'm sorry, Dr. Lori. I'm
No,
always
it's fine. It's
I'm
fine.
coming to you.
So,
But
it's a spectrum of things. So the hypertensive disease starts with a hypertension, and when it becomes preeclampsia, it becomes a syndrome where you have elevated blood pressure, your kidneys are in a state of like failure, where you're beginning to spill protein in your urine, lots
mm,
of amounts of protein. Your liver enzymes become very, very elevated,
mm,
and then sometimes your platelets, which make your blood clot, can begin to drop. So
mm,
that syndrome is considered pre-eclampsia.
mm.
When it becomes eclampsia, you end up having seizures
Wow.
due to the elevated blood pressure and all those things, and the spectrum just goes on from there, and then goes on something called HELP syndrome, which is an even more severe space after the eclampsia. So it kind of all starts with that high blood pressure, and
Hmm.
it just kind of travels on into
Hmm.
deeper things. Frequently found in very young
Hmm.
moms and moms over 35 as well.
Hmm.
Frequently found in your first pregnancy,
Mm,
and it has something to do with like our immune response
mm,
syndrome to having this pregnancy within our bodies. But
mm.
that is the spectrum of hypertension and preeclampsia and then eclampsia.
Wow. All right. One of the last reasons, that we are experiencing so much maternal mortality rates, such a high maternal mortality rate, is regional causes. The
Mhm.
South, where more than half of the nation's Black population resides, has a significant labor, delivery, and hospital closures, like throughout the South, throughout the rural communities, that has worsened during the pandemic, making rural Black women at a disproportionately higher risk. So, here is the call to action. As individuals and for each other, we have to talk to a healthcare provider if anything doesn't feel right, or if it's concerning. Talk to a healthcare professional. Know and seek immediate care. if experiencing any of the urgent maternal warning signs, including severe headache, extreme swelling of hands or face, trouble breathing, heavy vaginal bleeding or discharge, overwhelming tiredness, and more. These symptoms could indicate a potentially life threatening complication. And be aware of chronic conditions or conditions that may arise during pregnancy, like hypertension, diabetes, or depression. Um, Another call to action: doctors and hospitals confront the need to address unconscious or conscious bias in healthcare and create accountability. It's very important. Building more diversity in medicine, particularly a pipeline of Black maternal health clinicians, is key, as studies have shown Black patients fare better when they're cared for by Black doctors, and standardized coordination of care and response to emergencies. Improved delivery of quality prenatal and postpartum care. And then on a state and national level, we must demand accountability, a review of the causes and opportunities for prevention behind every pregnancy related death. Insurance companies are powerful and well funded against wrongful death cases, and that you really need to know. And plus, we must demand to identify and address social factors influencing maternal health, such as unstable housing or transportation access, food insecurity, substance use, violence, and racial and economic inequality. They are all factors in maternal care for Black women and communities. So, A Mother's Intuition. You gotta watch it. It's a thrill. Every time I hear someone say it's a thriller, I'm like, oh my God, what's gonna happen? What's gonna happen to this movie? I gotta watch it. Gotta watch it.
You gotta watch it.
A Mother's Intuition. It premieres on TV1 on Sunday, July 23rd, 9 Eastern, 8 Central. Susan Henry, thank you so much for being with us. Dr. Lori Johnson, thank you for your contribution. And Cass, girl, thank you, girl.
Thank you. It's so long I haven't seen you, but thank
I
you.
know. Thank all of you. And make sure that you have a nice Mother's Intuition party. I think this would be a great mother's party.
Absolutely.
Yes.
A great women's party. If you want to see more content that is important,
yes,
support important content.
That part.
Right there. Thank you, Cass. Thank you, Arlene. Thank you, Dr. Lori.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Releve, for also bringing this project to light as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
All right.